In 1996, Samson March embarked on his educational journey by stepping into kindergarten. Unfortunately, his first day was marred by the absence of his mother, Janet, who had been away for a week. As his 6th birthday approached, Samson's anxiety grew. His teacher noted that he hadn't bid farewell to his mother. Meanwhile, his father, the esteemed attorney Perry March, informed everyone that Janet was simply on vacation. However, he did confess that they had a disagreement before her sudden departure. The root of the issue stemmed from Perry's involvement in a $224,000 out-of-court settlement related to a harassment incident at his former workplace, Bass, Berry, and Sims, which Janet was unaware of. Hastily packing her bags, Janet left Perry with a list of tasks to complete during her absence, dubbing it Janet's 12-day vacation. Despite Perry's reassurances to Janet's parents that she would return in time for Samson's birthday celebration, Janet failed to make an appearance. The situation was perplexing, especially since the argument had occurred on August 15th. If Janet had indeed planned a 12-day vacation, she would have known that invitations had been sent out for a party scheduled on August 25th. Perry, however, claimed she would be back on the 27th. In an attempt to shield Janet's absence, Perry informed Samson's kindergarten friend's parents that she was in California visiting her brother, citing an ear infection as the reason for her prolonged stay. Nevertheless, Janet never returned, leaving Perry to ponder whether she had vanished or abandoned her family. The daughter of one of Nashville's wealthiest lawyers had disappeared without a trace. The circumstances surrounding her sudden departure raised questions about her well-being. What could have prompted Janet to leave her young children behind so abruptly? Was she a victim of foul play, or did she choose to vanish voluntarily? Born into a family of distinguished Jewish lawyers in Nashville in 1963, Janet Gail Levine was accustomed to a life of privilege and prestige. Her father, Lawrence Levine, had established an insurance law practice that would later evolve into the renowned firm Levine, Orr and Geraciotti. Janet, the eldest of 2 siblings, possessed an extraordinary aspiration to become an artist, a pursuit that defied the expectations set by her hard-working father, who had dedicated himself to providing her with a life of opulence and grandeur. In contrast, her brother Mark dutifully followed in their father's footsteps, becoming a lawyer. However, long before her graduation from the esteemed University School of Nashville, Janet's artistic endeavors were already being showcased at prestigious venues such as the Jewish Community Center and various esteemed restaurants. Within her social circle, Janet was affectionately referred to as the eccentric visionary, a title bestowed upon her by her friends who recognized her as a remarkable fusion of sensitivity, nurturing instincts, and captivating charm. She was hailed as the quintessential embodiment of an artist, possessing a unique and unparalleled essence. One remarkable testament to her unconventional nature was her ownership of a patent for a collapsible baby chair. Despite her unwavering belief in its functionality and marketability, she chose not to pursue its commercial potential, a decision that perplexed many. However, amidst her creative brilliance, Janet's close associates observed her occasional inclination towards challenging behavior during what they referred to as her moods. Undeterred by these occasional complexities, Janet pursued her artistic education at the prestigious University of Michigan, where fate intervened. It was within the hallowed halls of this esteemed institution that she crossed paths with Perry, a fellow undergraduate. Their introduction was orchestrated by Janet's roommate, Stacy Goodman. Unfortunately, Janet's forgetfulness caused her to miss their initial date, a planned visit to a synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. Profusely apologetic, she revealed her endearing idiosyncrasies to Perry when they finally spent time together. From that moment on, their connection was unbreakable, and they soon embarked on a journey of inseparability, choosing to share their lives together. Their harmonious coexistence continued until the unfortunate day when Janet mysteriously vanished, leaving Perry devastated and bewildered. Born in 1961, Perry March hailed from a lineage deeply rooted in both Romanian Jewish heritage and Israeli immigration. Originally bearing the surname Maravich, his family was compelled to alter it to March due to frequent misspellings. Perry, the eldest of 3 siblings, was burdened by tragedy at a tender age. His younger brother, Ron, and sister, Kathy, were mere infants when darkness descended upon their lives. When Perry was 9 years old, tragedy struck his life as his beloved mother, Zipporah, met her untimely demise under enigmatic circumstances. Arthur, Perry's father, reveals that she had ingested Darvin, a pain-relieving medication to alleviate the throbbing ache caused by an injury. However, fate dealt a cruel hand as her delicate body system reacted vehemently to the medicine, plunging her into the depths of anaphylactic shock. Astonishingly, the certificate divulged that her unfortunate condition was a result of an overdose of an illicit substance. In those bygone days, the conventional mindset of society deemed self-inflicted demise as a shameful act, leading to the distortion of such incidents. Thus, the truth remained concealed, shrouded in the whispers of the community. Following the heart-wrenching loss of their mother, Arthur, in a valiant effort to shield his children from further anguish, whisked them away to their opulent summer abode, nestled in the picturesque landscapes of Michigan. Perry, the protagonist of our tale, embarked on a remarkable journey at La Lumiere School, where he excelled not only in his academic pursuits, but also in the realm of sports. His indomitable spirit and unwavering dedication earned him the prestigious title of a first-degree black belt in the art of karate. Meanwhile, Arthur, a distinguished figure in the military, concluded his illustrious career as a lieutenant colonel. As Perry ventured forth into the realm of higher education, his options were somewhat constrained due to his father's retirement. Nevertheless, being an in-state student bestowed upon him the privilege of reduced tuition fees at the esteemed University of Michigan. It was here that he delved into the captivating realm of Asian studies, immersing himself in the rich tapestry of cultures and traditions. However, whispers of a slight temper that occasionally flared within him circulated amongst his peers. A woman, claiming to have been on the receiving end of his wrath during their time at the University of Michigan, came forward with her allegations. Yet Perry vehemently refuted these claims, steadfastly maintaining his innocence. Upon the culmination of his collegiate journey, Perry embarked upon a new chapter of his life, donning the role of a broker at the prestigious Oppenheimer and Company, an illustrious investment bank and finance company nestled within the vibrant city of Chicago, Illinois. Approximately half a year later, Janet made her entrance into Perry's life. The two of them spent a splendid 2 years in the bustling city of Chicago, where Perry diligently honed his skills as a management trainee at a subsidiary of the esteemed Oppenheimer and Company. As their journey progressed, Janet, with her artistic inclinations, enrolled in classes at the prestigious Art Institute. However, the allure of Chicago proved too overwhelming for her delicate sensibilities, and she yearned to return to the comforting embrace of her hometown. With her persuasive powers, she convinced Perry to embark on a new chapter in Nashville, where he could pursue his legal education at the esteemed Vanderbilt Law School. Janet's powers of persuasion extended even further, as she managed to secure her father's benevolent support in funding Perry's tuition at Vanderbilt University Law School. Lawrence Levine, in his infinite generosity, graciously agreed to this arrangement. One might ponder the reason behind such a substantial investment in someone who was not kin. Yet when Janet introduced Perry to her parents, they immediately recognized his exceptional qualities. His unwavering dedication and ambitious nature left an indelible impression on them, and they wholeheartedly believed in his potential. Janet's mother, in particular, showered Perry with affection, treating him as if he were her own flesh and blood. Perry's time at law school proved to be a resounding success, as he excelled academically and earned a coveted spot on the law review. His competitive spirit and shrewd negotiation skills set him apart from his peers. Above all else, he prioritized financial triumph, leaving no room for compromise. His classmates, in jest, even dubbed him the ideal candidate for future prosecution on charges of securities fraud. Meanwhile, Janet, forever the romantic soul, grew increasingly impatient for Perry to take the plunge and propose. Unable to bear the anticipation any longer, she took matters into her own hands and, in a display of boldness, proposed to him on bended knee amidst the enchanting surroundings of Percy Warner Park in the year 1987. Perry and Janet, united in their love, exchanged vows in the vibrant city of Nashville. Once again, Janet's parents extended their unwavering support, generously providing the newlyweds with a substantial down payment to acquire a splendid abode in a more affluent neighborhood. Nestled upon a picturesque hillside on 32nd Avenue, their new residence exuded an air of opulence, a testament to their aspirations. Perry was grateful for the support, especially considering his father's recent financial struggles. Arthur faced the threat of losing his home in Michigan to Lakeshore Bank and Trust in early 1986. The property on 42 Apache Trail in Mishana, Michigan, was now under the bank's ownership. Lawrence Levine, Perry's father-in-law, came to the rescue by purchasing the house from the bank for $115,000. Lawrence generously allowed Arthur to stay in the house without paying rent. However, he later proposed that Arthur move to Nashville to be closer to Perry and Janet. Their unwavering love and generosity towards their daughter and son-in-law were truly remarkable. Even after Arthur relocated to Nashville, the Levines welcomed him into their home. They provided financial assistance to help him get back on his feet and were incredibly hospitable. Unbeknownst to Arthur, Lawrence Levine terminated his lease on the Michigan house in early 1987, citing failure to pay rent. The property was eventually sold for $144,500 in 1988. Following his graduation, Perry received lucrative job offers from two prestigious New York law firms. Despite the tempting offers, he decided to join Bass, Berry, and Sims, a renowned law firm in Nashville. His starting salary was an impressive $422,500. In the late 1980s, Bass, Berry, and Sims underwent significant changes due to pressure from influential Jewish figures in Nashville, leading to the diversification of the legal team. In 1988, Perry March and his classmate Bennett Ross from Vanderbilt made history by becoming the first Jewish attorneys to join the firm. They were joined by Dale Wright, an African-American, and several female attorneys, marking a significant milestone for the firm. Meanwhile, Janet utilized her talents as a children's book illustrator. In 1990, their first child, Samson, was born after 3 years of marriage. However, Perry faced challenges at work during the summer of 1991. A complaint was lodged by a paralegal regarding a letter that mysteriously appeared on her chair, adorned with provocative language. The contents of the letter delved into the depths of despair, describing the desperate struggle for breath when drowning and the subsequent surrender to fate, finding solace in its embrace. Furthermore, it lamented the loss of intimacy within a marriage as it gradually transforms into a mundane existence after a few years. Another letter arrived approximately 2 weeks later, bearing the date of July 31st. This second missive, much like its predecessor, was meticulously typed and spanned only half a page. The enigmatic writer ingeniously instructed her to make contact through an intriguing method. She was to procure a specific book from the library, and it was through this act that he would initiate communication. Following the instructions outlined in the letter, she retrieved the designated book, signed the checkout card, and discreetly left it in its original place. The writer's excitement grew, oblivious to the fact that this was a clever ploy to ensnare him. On August 14th, he penned yet another letter, brimming with unbridled ecstasy. However, unbeknownst to him, the security firm had captured his every move on tape. The culprit was none other than Perry March. Faced with an ultimatum, Perry was left with two choices, either face termination or resign from his position. The paralegal was granted a paid vacation by the company, but upon her return, she found Perry still lingering within the confines of the firm. Their paths frequently crossed in the shared parking lot, causing her discomfort whenever she needed to attend to personal matters or indulge in a cup of coffee. Overwhelmed by the distressing situation, she made the decision to sever ties with the firm and seek legal counsel. 2 weeks later, Perry finally bid farewell to the firm. The higher-ups spoke kindly of him, perhaps in an attempt to avoid any potential complications surrounding his departure. Some lawyers within the firm found it suspicious that Perry chose to leave immediately after the paralegal's resignation. Unbeknownst to Janet, Perry was obligated to compensate the woman for the harassment she endured. He kept this payment a secret, agreeing to disburse $25,000 over the course of 4 years. The initial $12,500 would be paid in monthly installments, while the remaining half would be settled as a lump sum at the end of the agreed-upon period. To circumvent any potential legal entanglements and safeguard the reputation of both himself and the esteemed firm, Perry found himself compelled to align with his father-in-law's prestigious establishment, Levine Orr and Geraciotti. Within this realm, he skillfully represented an array of local enterprises, including the illustrious Platinum Club, the resplendent Music City Mix Factory, and the affluent denizens of Nashville. Notably, he even dedicated his legal prowess pro bono to the noble cause of the Jewish Community Center, thereby fostering an impeccable standing within the community. Meanwhile, Janet, steadfast in her artistic pursuits, would often indulge in solitary luncheons at nearby establishments, her sketchpad serving as her constant companion. She maintained a certain distance from her companions, rarely divulging the intricacies of her personal relationships. Observers couldn't help but notice a tinge of melancholy in her countenance, occasionally bordering on despondency. In the year 1994, the couple was blessed with the arrival of a precious baby girl. In a heartfelt tribute to Perry's departed mother, they bestowed upon their daughter the name Tzipora. With the birth of their child, plans were set in motion to establish a grand abode in the serene expanse of Forest Hills, spanning an impressive 5,300 square feet, complemented by a sprawling 4-acre open space. As was customary, the Levines graciously bore the financial burden of this endeavor. This resplendent dwelling was to be Janet's sanctuary, a manifestation of her deepest desires. She even took charge of christening the street, initially christening it Chocolate Street, only to acquiesce to a neighbor's complaint and rename it Blackberry Road. Perry, in his own account, assumed the role of the driving force within their union, while Janet, the visionary, harbored grand aspirations. As the construction unfolded, contractors vividly recall Janet's exacting standards as she meticulously oversaw the realization of her intricate designs. Although her demands could be challenging, the contractors, accustomed to the discerning tastes of affluent clientele, refrained from voicing any grievances. However, whenever Janet's temperament flared, it was Perry who adeptly intervened, skillfully smoothing over any discord that arose. Janet had meticulously crafted a list of aspirations she sought to conquer in her lifetime: a thriving career, a devoted husband, a splendid abode, and the joys of motherhood. Each event unfolded as predicted. However, beneath the surface, trouble brewed in paradise. The picturesque French-style home was intended to bring Janet's aspirations to life, yet her marriage had been lacking true happiness for some time. Perry's mishandling of their finances eroded Janet's trust in him. Concerned about a potential divorce, the Levines ensured that all of Janet's assets were under her name. Perry confided in Carolyn, Janet's mother, about the marital issues they faced. Subsequently, they sought the help of a marriage counselor. By 1996, their relationship was still strained. On August 14th, the day before her disappearance, Janet's behavior was notably different, as observed by the children's nanny. She appeared withdrawn and engrossed in her work, shutting herself in her office. The following day, August 15th, Janet's friends noticed her unease around Perry. An appointment with a divorce lawyer was scheduled for August 16th. While 2 carpenters conducted warranty work at their home, Janet closely monitored them while Perry interacted with the children. An argument ensued that night, marking the end of their marriage. Perry suggested staying at a hotel to give Janet space, but she declined. Instead, she packed her belongings and left for an undisclosed location for 12 days, leaving behind a list of tasks for Perry to complete. 12 days is an oddly specific time frame, especially considering that her son's 6th birthday was only within 10 days. However, she had assured Perry that she would be back in time for the celebration. Although Perry was unaware of the exact plans for the birthday party, his wife had already sent out the invitations. In the middle of the night, he reached out to the Levines to discuss the recent argument. Being familiar with her occasional outbursts, her parents advised him to give her some time to cool off. However, the following morning came, and Janet still hadn't returned. Her parents and friends made numerous calls to hotels, but there was no sign of her anywhere. This was a cause for concern. Together with Perry, they searched parking areas, visited the airport, and drove around aimlessly. Around 10 o'clock, Janet's friend Marissa Moody and her 6-year-old son arrived at Janet and Perry's house. Sampson and Zipporah appeared to be happy and healthy on that particular Friday morning. Marissa felt somewhat neglected as she and Janet had planned for their sons to spend the day playing together. However, upon their arrival, there was no one there to greet them. Zipporah was playing outside with the nanny. Sampson let them in, and they spent time in the kitchen. Sampson informed Marissa that his mother was not at home, but his father was upstairs working. Although Marissa didn't see Perry, she received a message from Sampson stating that it was fine for them to stay and play. She assumed that Perry was simply ignoring her as usual. Marissa left her son to play and returned home. The only peculiar thing she noticed was a large rug that didn't match the simple style of the rest of the house. When she came back later to pick up her son, the rug had disappeared. By Sunday night, August 17th, Carolyn Levine began to grow worried. Janet had never been away from her children for such an extended period without any communication. The thought of involving the police crossed her mind, but Perry and his brother, Ron, who had come to assist, convinced the Levines to wait until the 12-day period had passed. Sampson's 6th birthday proceeded as planned on August 25th. The family anticipated that people would inquire about Janet's absence, so Perry and the Levines decided to inform the party guests that she was in California visiting her brother Mark. A fabricated tale was concocted, claiming that Janet couldn't return home due to an ear infection. Surprisingly, the police were only informed about her disappearance 2 weeks later, on August 29th. By that time, Janet's brother Mark had already arrived in Nashville. As soon as the report was filed, a police car from the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department arrived at the Levines' residence. Perry, who happened to be present, was overcome with anxiety upon seeing the vehicle. His uncontrollable trembling made it difficult for him to stand up from his chair, requiring several attempts. Eventually, he mustered the courage to ask Mark to contact his brother, Ron. On September 7th, Janet's Volvo was discovered parked at Brickworth apartment complex on Harding Road, approximately 5 miles away from her house. Interestingly, most of the belongings Perry claimed she had taken were still inside the vehicle. The detective who examined the Volvo noticed dust and pollen on its exterior, indicating that it had remained unused for a considerable period. Inside the car, the police found Janet's purse containing her identification, credit cards, passport, and a small amount of cash. Additionally, a packed suitcase and a toiletry bag were also discovered. However, the gray suitcase Perry mentioned was conspicuously absent from the vehicle. The front passenger seat was pushed back, while the driver's seat was pushed forward. Janet's white sandals were meticulously placed on the floor, suggesting that they were not discarded hastily. Investigators also observed that Janet's suitcase lacked certain items, such as bras, toothpaste, and a hairbrush, which are typically included by women. On the same day, a private investigator hired by the Levines had a conversation with Perry, who curiously referred to Janet in the past tense. Later, Perry became furious and demanded a list of everyone the investigator had spoken to regarding Janet's car. 5 days later, the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department conducted a search of Perry's Jeep and discovered hair and fiber evidence in the back seat. During a police interview on September 10th, Perry displayed signs of nervousness and acknowledged his rights as an attorney. He proceeded to provide a handwritten statement detailing his account of the events on August 15th and a list of tasks he had to complete. This was the moment Carolyn Levine, Janet's mother, realized something peculiar. She had come across the exact same list on a yellow notepad before, but it was written in Perry's handwriting. The list Perry showed everyone, however, was neatly typed out, which was completely out of character for Janet. Janet's mother pointed out that Janet usually wrote her lists by hand or dictated them to others, never printing them from a computer. And when she did write, it was always in lowercase letters, unlike the list Perry had. Another difference was that Janet would always date her lists at the top, while Perry's list had the date at the bottom, a habit he seemed to have. To make matters more intriguing, multiple witnesses came forward to the police, claiming they had seen Perry march with other women in the months leading up to Janet's disappearance. One witness even saw Perry leaving Belcourt Cinema, arm in arm with a stunning blonde, while another swore they saw him having an intimate dinner with a brunette at Boundary Restaurant. Interestingly enough, Janet and her friends had a girls' night out at the same restaurant on a Tuesday, just before she vanished. Meanwhile, during a weekend in mid-September, Perry took the children to Chicago to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with his family. His father, Arthur, couldn't join them due to financial constraints. As the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department continued their investigation, they obtained a search warrant for the March House. They informed Perry's lawyer on September 16th about their plans to execute the search the following day. However, when they searched the house, they discovered that the computer's hard drive had been forcibly removed and was nowhere to be found. It was interesting to note that Perry had been informed in advance about the police's intention to check the hard drive. The police were relentless in their pursuit of answers regarding Perry's activities since Janet's disappearance. A resident who worked for an airline came forward, stating that on August 16th around 1 a.m., he had seen a surprised Perry walking a mountain bike past him. On August 21st, nearly a week after her disappearance, it was discovered that Perry had visited a local tire store. Surprisingly, he purchased new tires for his Jeep, even though the existing ones were in excellent condition. Perry claimed that he simply wanted a different brand. Interestingly, records showed that Janet typically used a Visa credit card before she went missing, while Perry primarily used a MasterCard. However, since her disappearance, Janet had not used either card, whereas Perry had used both. This revelation left the Levines furious, with Lawrence Levine firmly believing that Perry had done something to his daughter. As a result, Perry had to relocate to a rented home in the North Chicago suburb of Wilmette, costing him $3,000 a month. He took most of his and Janet's belongings with him. During the packing process, Perry's friend Andrew Sachs noticed his frustration. Perry's anger was directed towards the Levines and the Nashville police. In light of this, Andrew advised Perry to refrain from contacting them any further. Additionally, Diane, a friend of Janet's, mentioned a disturbing conversation she had with Perry. He asked her what she would say if he confessed to putting Janet's body in her car, leaving their children at home, and then returning as if nothing had happened. Phone records indicated that Perry called his brother Ron in Wilmette at 9:11 p.m. on the night of August 15th, and they spoke for 3 minutes. Subsequently, at 9:14 p.m., Perry called his sister Kathy at her boyfriend's house in New Buffalo, Michigan, and their conversation lasted 4 minutes. Detectives suspect that these calls were Perry's initial attempts to conceal a grim reality, that he had unintentionally caused his wife's demise. However, Perry maintains that he merely contacted his siblings to inform them of Janet leaving him and the children. Ron's wife confirmed that they were preparing for bed when Perry called, and she verified that Ron discussed Janet's departure. She even scolded him for not being more supportive of his brother. Kathy March and her boyfriend both corroborated Perry's account of the events. After concluding his conversation with his sister at 9:18 p.m., the authorities speculated that Perry might have concealed Janet's body either in the nearby woods or in the basement of their residence. Subsequently, they suspected that he gathered Janet's belongings, placed them in her Volvo, and drove the vehicle to the Brickworth apartment complex. According to the police's theory, he left the car there and either jogged or rode a mountain bike the 5-mile distance back home. Meanwhile, the police believed that Perry's 2 children were asleep upstairs. The intensity of the Levines' anger became unbearable for Perry, compelling him to make a difficult decision. He faced disbarment and had to cease his legal practice. Numerous legal battles ensued, including disputes over visitation rights, but Perry realized he had to distance himself from their influential grasp. Consequently, he sought refuge in Mexico, where his father had relocated a few years earlier. In May 2000, the Levines traveled to Ajijic, Mexico, in an attempt to assert their visitation rights with the children, which Perry adamantly refused. A month later, they returned with a court order from Mexico, resulting in Perry's arrest on charges related to visa violations. Although the charges were later dropped, the Levines took the children out of school and flew them back to Nashville. They pursued permanent custody, believing their actions were lawful, while Perry viewed it as an abduction. Tennessee lawyers took up Perry's case pro bono, invoking the International Child Abduction Remedies Act. The Levines argued that they possessed rightful custody based on a visitation order and contended that the children's home was not located in Mexico. They also raised concerns about risks and human rights. The Levines firmly believed that Perry was responsible for their daughter's demise and filed a civil lawsuit against him. However, they did not assert that the children had witnessed the incident or suffered harm under his care. Perry's outstanding contempt citations did not meet the criteria to prevent his petition as a fugitive. Consequently, the children had to be returned to Perry after 39 days. The Levines disputed every aspect of the situation, while Perry argued that they lacked legal standing. The judge expressed disapproval towards the Levines for exceeding the authority of the Mexican court order and facing kidnapping charges in Mexico. After the children were returned to him, Perry relocated to Mexico, where he worked as a business advisor and remarried shortly after settling down. Perry entered into matrimony with a local woman. In 2003, he achieved another legal victory against the Levines when the Tennessee Court of Appeals overturned the wrongful death judgment. The court determined that the Levines failed to present any new evidence implicating Perry in Janet's death. Their delay in amending the claim was deemed unwarranted. While Perry's actions did not warrant a default judgment, the court did not dismiss the wrongful claim based on its merits. One judge dissented, arguing that the issue of Janet's possible murder had been part of the proceedings from the beginning. In April 2006, Perry was found guilty of embezzling $23,000 from his father-in-law's firm. This occurred over 2 years prior to Janet's disappearance. 2 months later, he was convicted of conspiracy in relation to his wife's disappearance. Despite civil cases ruling in Perry's favor, the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department reopened Janet's case. Perry's business dealings in Mexico resulted in accusations of fraud against him in 2001. He allegedly made threats towards a lawyer and client there. Consequently, Perry was indicted on charges of murdering his wife, tampering with evidence, and abusing a corpse. All of this was based on evidence presented to a grand jury. He was arrested in August 2005 and brought back to Nashville, where he admitted to certain details of the case but maintained his innocence. Perry attempted to solicit and recruit another inmate, Russell Ferris, to permanently eliminate his in-laws. In exchange, he promised to pay Russell's $3,000 bail and instructed him to hide in Mexico with the assistance of his father, Arthur, who would provide accommodation. Perry was unaware that Russell was cooperating with the police. He contacted Arthur and explained to Russell how he should carry out the plan to end the Levines' lives. The older man said to him the precise hour to visit the Levines, where to procure a firearm, the specific type of firearm to utilize, the necessity of wearing surgical gloves throughout, and the route to Ajijic thereafter. Another prisoner, Cornelius King, attested that Perry admitted to striking Janet with a wrench during a dispute and disposing of her remains. Reno Martin occupied the adjacent cell to Perry. He recounted how Perry returned from a child custody, hearing one day visibly distressed, perturbed by the prospect of dealing with the Levines once more. Perry exclaimed, "It should have been them that he had taken care of instead of—" Before abruptly halting himself, Martin remembered Perry appearing pallid afterwards. Following a week-long trial, Perry was convicted on all counts. A decade after Janet's alleged murder, Perry was handed a 56-year prison sentence with concurrent terms for theft and conspiracy to kill his in-laws, followed by a consecutive sentence for Janet's murder. Arthur March was also apprehended for participating in the plot to eliminate the Levines. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he agreed to testify against his own son. He recounted how Perry requested his help in disposing of Janet's body after an accident occurred, and he complied. He was eager to assist his son. However, he could not recall the exact location where they disposed of the body, which remains undiscovered to this day. Perry's father's plea deal was rejected, resulting in a 5-year prison sentence. Tragically, Arthur passed away a mere 3 months later. Following Perry's conviction, the Levines advocated for changes in Tennessee legislation. This led to the expansion of grandparent visitation rights and the termination of parental custody in cases where one parent is found responsible for the other's death. Janet was commemorated with an art gallery at Nashville's Gordon Jewish Community Center. Despite being incarcerated, Perry continues to assert his innocence. The overwhelming evidence and testimonies presented were sufficient to secure his imprisonment. On June 21, 2000, in Winter Park, Florida, within the Orange County apartment community, an individual witnessed cats engaging in play with an object. Out of curiosity, the person approached to investigate and stumbled upon a human skull. Promptly, the Orange County Sheriff's Office was notified and quickly responded to the scene, initiating a thorough investigation of the vicinity. As the examination progressed, additional skeletal remains and items of clothing were discovered, partially concealed in a nearby vacant lot. Adjacent to the remains, a small caliber firearm was also uncovered. Following the completion of the autopsy, forensic anthropologists concluded that the remains belonged to a Caucasian male aged between 40 and 60 years. These remains had been interred for approximately 7 to 8 years prior to their discovery. The cause of death was determined to be a gunshot wound to the head, evidenced by a hole in the skull. Unfortunately, due to limited information about the victim, the case eventually grew cold. However, in August 2022, the Sheriff's Office submitted forensic evidence to Othram Labs, a staggering 22 years after the initial discovery of the unidentified man's remains. Through meticulous analysis, Othram successfully extracted DNA from the remains. In January 2024, they conclusively identified the individual as Paul Lawrence Larry Rougeau Jr. Born on October 29, 1951, Larry was approximately 40 years old at the time of his demise. He had spent his formative years in the Winter Park area, growing up alongside his siblings and graduating from Orlando's Colonial Park High School.